So let's try another lateral thinking puzzle. In 1960, a plane set off from Tokyo to fly to Moscow. It flew well over the sea over to China, but as it approached the Mongolian border with China, a dust storm from the Gobi Desert caused problems with the engines and the plane began to go down. These two countries, Mongolia and China, had recently had a border dispute and there was no real communication between the two sides. The plane actually crashed, unfortunately, right on the border, straddling a marked border, so that parts of the plane were on both sides of the border. So the question was, in which of the two countries did they bury the survivors? Going back to lateral thinking number 10, the father and son in the car crash, when the poor unfortunate boy arrived badly injured and the doctor came out and said, "I can't treat this boy, he's my son," obviously, there's only two people who can say, "He's my son." If the father is dead, it has to be the mother. And similarly, if there is a doctor who has a brother living in New York, and the first doctor lives in London, but there is no doctor living in New York who has a brother who is also a doctor living in London, then it must be that the doctor living in London is his sister. So simple, really. So some more. This one is really all about listening. Imagine you're in a room, big square room, made of walls that are 10 feet thick. The floor, the ceiling, the roof is also 10 feet thick. Basically, you're inside a box where there are no windows, no doors, and surrounding you is this 10-foot thick layer of titanium. How do you get out? It is possible. And next one is to do with a walk in the mountains. So a hiker, walking through the mountains, following the map very carefully, got to the mountain lodge nicely before nighttime, ready to spend the night. Walks in, finds everything's been left very carefully by the person who used it last time. There is a fire made, ready to go. There is a candle, ready for use. There is a lamp, an oil lamp, ready to be lit. The hiker finds there is only one match left in the matchbox in his pack. In that circumstance, what would you light first? Let's go back to some answers. The Gobi Desert. Perhaps if I just remind you of what I said, this time in particular at the end. The plane flew, the plane got into difficulty, the plane crashed right on the border between the two countries. The question posed being, in which of the two countries did they bury the survivors? Do I have to repeat it? Bury the survivors. Imagine you're in a plane crash, you survive, and somebody comes along and says, "I've got to bury you now." We don't bury survivors. It's amazing how you can miss that still. The titanium walls. Instead of the last word, this one is all about the first word. I start off by saying, imagine you're in a room made of. Doesn't really matter what I say. You're not actually in the room. So if you want to answer the question, how do you get out of such a room? Stop imagining. It's very simple. And lastly, When you're stuck in the mountain lodge, you might remember this, although I think you'd be forced to the same conclusion without any particular thought. If you have a lamp, a fire, and a candle, and only one match, then the first thing to light, obviously, is the match.